What is the 21st thing that I would do differently if I were going to college today? I would use internal validation as my guiding light to college. Hi, I'm Passion Darby, and 31 years ago, almost to date, I was an 18-year-old young woman, and I decided that I was going to college no matter what. And I did go to college. I went to college that fall. It was fall of 1993. And so here I am, 31 years later, and I have amassed a vast amount of information, knowledge, wisdom, and experience that I will be sharing with college goers today through this channel. So, what is the 21st thing that I would do differently if I were going to college today? I would definitely use internal validation as my guiding light to college. So, let me tell you why this has become important to me. When I went to college, I did major in mass media arts and I graduated from Clark Atlanta University with a bachelor's degree in mass media arts. And the purpose of my doing that was because I was aiming to work as a newscaster and journalist after college. However, in my heart, I have always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I have known that I wanted to be an entrepreneur since I was a child. And when I say a child, I mean 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old. And I even visualize at age maybe eight that my business would have my name on it one day. It would be a business where people would be able to know my name immediately upon interacting with my business. I don't know why I had that vision, but that is definitely the vision that I had, which ironically has come to pass. But obviously, I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I saw this for myself when I was growing up. And I also spoke it out loud when I would spend time with my sister and my cousins who were mostly female like myself, and we would be talking sometimes at my home about our futures, like young girls do. You talk about the kind of life that you want. And I remember them talking about how they wanted to be married and they wanted children, and many of them have gone on to acquire those things and do very well in life. But for me, I always used to tell them, I do not want children. I do not want to be married. All I want to do is go as far as I can in education, travel around the world, and be free. And my I saw entrepreneurship as my ticket to freedom. I did not share that with my sisters and cousins, but in my young heart's beats, my young heart beats, I knew that that was going to be the only way that I would achieve that. So, what changed? What was the turning point for me? Well, I was a senior in high school and I was only 16 years old. I began my senior year at age 15 because I had made two doubles in elementary school. So I actually started high school at 12 years old. So this day, during the second semester of my senior year, a few weeks from graduation, I was participating in our annual career day at my high school. And I was in a classroom, the classroom of my history teacher, whose name is, well, uh, yes, it is. I was going to say was, but I think he's still living, is Mr. Skokda. So, as our guest, our career day guest went around from room to room, there was a guest who came into that classroom, and she was a public relations professional and she was also a journalist. So I listened to what she had to say intently because that's the kind of student that I was. I was, attentive. I was a good student, and I was highly participatory. I think that's a word. in the classroom. So I listened and I heard everything that she had to say. But after she finished speaking, I left the classroom like a normal day. I walked over to my locker to get my books and things for the next class like a normal day. And then Mr. Skokna came to my locker. He came to me and he said, Passion, I was thinking you really ought to go into journalism because you are so well spoken, you write well, and you're very articulate. And I just think that, listening to that woman describe her career, I think you would be very good in that career. So, to be honest with you, I did not really know what journalism was. I, of course, knew what newscasting was because the news and watching television news at that time was a big deal in our country's culture. And so I knew what the news was, but I had never seen myself doing anything like that. And I did not tie it to journalism. But I was so grateful and excited that Mr. Skokna saw anything in me in terms of what I should study in college, that I just took it and ran with it. Because the truth is, I knew that I was going to be graduating soon, and I was going to a college prep private all black school on the west side of Chicago. And I knew that I was college bound. But no one in my home was talking to me about my post high school plans. No one was talking to me about my gifts and my talents. No one was talking to me about what I could major in or what I should major in or even going to college. So to have someone take an interest in anything regarding those topics at that time was so important to me, and it meant so much to me because I was afraid, to be honest with you. I was a 16-year-old child and I was afraid because I knew that I was graduating, but I had no clue what would be coming next. So when Mr. Skokna told me that, I just took it and I ran with it. And then 2 years later, I left for college and I majored in mass media arts because that was the closest major available at Clark Atlanta University to journalism. So, to be honest with you, during my time at Clark, the mass communication or mass media arts building was popping. It was a very hot time in Atlanta, Georgia for all things media. So it was a very popular building, and I was very social in the building, and I had a great time studying mass media arts. But that heartstring was pulling on me every time I would walk past the business department. I would long to be in that building instead. I would wonder what those students were doing. I would wonder what they were learning. I envied them. I liked their structure. I was a young woman who was yearning for structure. I do best in structure. And so I was wondering, what do they do in that building? And sometimes when they would walk out, I would just really admire the way that they carried themselves on campus. Whereas the people in my building, including me, we were more fun and social and laid back. But the business students were so well put together. They were required to wear dress business attire on campus every day. So we could notice them immediately because they were always in suits or in dresses and heels. And they also had a professor over there named Dennis Kimbrough, who was a major entrepreneur and author at the time. And he was a teacher there. And I wanted to take his class, but if you listen to my earlier videos, you would know that I transferred into Clark Atlanta University. So by the time I got to Clark, I had to rush and finish my own classes for my own major, and I did not get a chance to take a class with Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, even as an elective, which is one of my greatest regrets. So even though I was majoring in mass media arts per Mr. Skokna's advice, I really didn't have my heart in those courses. I honestly can't remember much of what I learned. I can remember my creative projects, but I cannot remember much of what I learned outside of that. So that meant that even though I was majoring in mass media arts, my heart was someplace else. It was with entrepreneurship. But I still remember what Mr. Skokna told me, and I stood with that because even still, as a senior in college, no one in my immediate family was asking me about what was going on with me in college, academically, because they knew I was smart. And so they trusted me to do the right thing all the time, which I did for the most part. But no one was saying, Passion, are you happy with this major? What's going on with you in terms of your plans after college graduation? No one was asking me what my classwork was like, or was I enjoying it, or did I want to pivot to another major? So I just kept Mr. Skokna's advice in my head all that time. And then I graduated, I came back home, and I was so lost and so in need of guidance. And I still used Mr. Skokna's advice as my guiding light because that's all I had. So, following that advice, I then went to Los Angeles, California, California State University, Los Angeles, and got a master's in communications or communication studies with a concentration in film writing and screenwriting. Because what I did learn about myself at Clark Atlanta through my mass media arts courses was that I'm a good writer. And so I focused in on that, but I was still lost trying to figure everything out and just using Mr. Skokna's advice as my guiding light, which was not an intelligent thing to do, but again, it was all I had. So let's fast forward. I graduated from California State University, Los Angeles, returned back to Chicago, Illinois, and I began working with the YMCA as a youth employment coordinator. Now, I really enjoyed working with students. Okay, so I was noticing that also about myself as I was matriculating through these different academic programs. And actually, when I was a senior in high school, a senior at Clark Atlanta University, I wrote my first book, which was a college planner. So, of, of course, I know now that that's where my heart is, entrepreneurship and using entrepreneurship to help students in college. But at that time, I did not get those signals. So here I am working for the YMCA Chicago branch, and we were contracted to go to different high schools to help their students gain employment. I walked into one of the schools that we were contracted with, and guess who I see? Mr. Skokna. I was so happy to see him, and he was so happy to see me, and we hugged, and he was teaching there as a history teacher. And I said, Mr. Skokna, guess what? I went to Clark Atlanta University and I majored in what you told me to. And I even just returned back from California from earning my master's in the same field, just like you told me to. And do y'all know he looked so confused? I can laugh about this today, but I was not laughing that day. Trust me. But he looked so confused and he said, Passion, mass media arts, mass communications, you should have been an entrepreneur. When I tell y'all I almost fell down the stairs of that very large school, they had multiple flights of stairs, and I could have literally fallen down every single one by one. I think my heart broke that day. I really think my heart broke that day. And he said, "You are a leader. You're a natural leader, and you should you should be working for other people. That could never work for you." I couldn't even speak, you all. I was devastated. It hit me that I had based my whole last, at that time, 8 years of my life the last 8 years of my life on external validation. Simply because no one, including myself, well, let me take a step back. No one whose opinion I did value, including my own, was in my mind. And I just took the opinion of the first person who actually showed interest in me being something post high school, and I took it and I ran with it. And I felt like at that time I completely ruined my life. Of course, I'm older now. I know I did not ruin my life, but I was very heartbroken that day. So he went on and he said, and I'm not surprised that you're here working with the students. You've always been a natural teacher, but you should definitely be working for yourself. You are a natural entrepreneur as well. You have always been a strong leader. So I blacked out. Honestly, I don't even remember what he said after that. I don't even remember how I got to my car. All I can tell you, I did not work that day. I left the building, went to my car in front of that high school, and I wept. I cried so hard and for so long in the middle of the west side of Chicago. I was heartbroken, and I could not believe that I had based so many years on someone else's validation of me. So, thankfully, I have been able to pivot and redeem myself only through self reflection, only through quieting my surroundings and hearing my own voice, and only by finding my internal validation compass within, which took a lot of spiritual work. And as I did that over the last several years, I have gone after my real dreams, my childhood dreams, my heartstring dreams. And that is why I want to talk to parents today. I do not want what happened to me to happen to college goers today, particularly college goers who look like me, who may be in desperate need of validation from their parents as I was at that age. So, what are some ways that you parents can keep your child from having a Mr. Skokna experience? And I do want to say before I go forward that Mr. Skokna cared deeply about me, as many of my teachers did in high school, as well as my high school principal. He did not mean me any harm, but my need for validation regarding my academic life and my college bound plans uh, position him to be able to cause me harm through his opinion. So let me help you not let that happen to your college goers. Number one, validate your college bound or college student. This means that, and you probably already do this because I think that most parents are well meaning, but tell your child how great they are. Tell your child what skills they have, what talents they have, and what gifts they have. What are their natural gifts? Talk to your child and ask your child what they want to do, which I'll talk about shortly, but just validate them. Try to do it as much as you can, because when they get out into the world, or when they're even at school as I was, high school as I was, 8 hours a day, there are other voices that can get into their ear, and you may or may not appreciate those voices or want those to be the voices that your child hears. Number two, ask your child what they want to do with their lives. What is their vision? Now, as I talked about earlier, I had a vision for my life very young, very young. I've always been intuitive. I've always been self reflective, and I always knew what I wanted to be. Nobody had to tell me that. I always knew who I wanted to be. I've also had the pleasure of working with young girls. I used to manage college prep girl programs for young girls. And I noticed that when these were middle school and middle school girls and elementary school girls, and I noticed that when I was working with them, they had a vision for their lives. That age, they already knew what they wanted to be. But now, 20 years later, these same girls are young women. They are 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. They've lost that vision. They've lost it. And when they call me for help and guidance, they say, and I ask them, because I always say, where is your mama? Where is your daddy? Because I am not their parent, even though I'm happy to guide them. I prefer their parents guide them. And they'll say to me, oh, my mom's too busy, or my mom doesn't listen to me, or my dad is off with his new family, or his new wife, or his girlfriend, or whatever the circumstances are. They always feel like they can't get that guidance from their parents, and they seek it elsewhere. And I may not want what you want for your child. So you or another advisor may not want what you want for your child. So it is best that you ask your child what they want and what their vision is. Which leads me to number 3. When your children speak, shut your mouth, please. I am 49 now, so I can say this to other 49-year-olds or people in my generation. I can share this with you all. If I were a child, I definitely would not say this to an older person, but I'm older now. And I want to just please beg of you that when your child is speaking, try to be quiet. I cringe when I am working with students and their parents, and the child cannot get a word in edgewise. I cringe when I see my friends who have children and their children are trying to tell them who they are, and the child cannot get a word in edgewise. I Even when I was a child, I used to want to tell my parents so bad, shut up. I'm trying to tell you who I am. I'm trying to tell you what my vision is for my life. I'm trying to tell you that I'm angry. I'm trying to tell you that I'm hurting. I don't know. Maybe it's a parent thing. And of course, I'm not a parent, but I don't know why parents have such a hard time being quiet while their children speak. I'm not judging you. I'm just asking you to please be aware so that your child will not have to come to me or a Mr. Skokna for their validation. Number 4, tell your college bound child what you think their gifts are so that they won't seek that validation outside the home. So you need to reaffirm this as they grow. So let me say this. Mr. Skokna did not have to tell me that I was a good speaker. I already knew that. I learned about my talents and gifts when I was in elementary school. Okay. But when you go to high school and all the changes that it brings, you can forget your gifts. And I had forgotten my gifts because one, I was no longer in that elementary school where I was reminded of my gifts daily. But 4 years, I mean, you have to remember that conversation with Mr. Skokna took place in my senior year. So that's 4 years of me being away from my elementary school environment where my gifts were reaffirmed every day. So by the time I spoke to Mr. Skokna, I was desperate for somebody to tell me what they saw in me. Desperate. You do not want to put your child in a state of desperation where they are seeking affirmation or reaffirmation about their gifts as they are growing through high school and then into college. Number 5, sit with your children and help them make a 4-year college plan. And this is important because if you do this, you will demonstrate to your children or your child that you care, that you're interested in their success, and that you're interested in the intricacies of their success. Because a lot of things can happen during college. It brings a lot of changes as well. And you need to be in tune with those changes as your child matriculates. Number 6, stay engaged with that plan and monitor the plan as they go through college to help them eliminate distractions. So, I mean, for me, I attended a historically Black university. HBCUs are just way too much fun. Easy. I'm sure every child in every college gets distracted, but it's a lot of fun attending an HBCU. So a student can get really distracted. I did not get that distracted, but I would have appreciated my parents asking me about my plans. And so I'm sure your children would appreciate that as well. So ask them about it, stay engaged with it, ask them if they're on track. Do they feel if they're off track? Are they being distracted? And if so, by what? So you want to ask those questions and monitor the plan while they are in school. And some of the ways you can do that now, you can even put the plan now on Google Docs and have it as a shared document, which is a tool I did not have when I was in college. And you and your child can monitor that plan together. Number 7, ask your child what is going on with their college bound or college life. What conversations are they having? And so this is important because I'd never told my parents about my conversation with Mr. Skokna, and they never asked. So they don't know what he was saying to me. And I have a feeling that if my mother in particular would have heard Mr. Skokna say those things to me, she probably would have said, yes, you're right. Passion is a good speaker, but she is she's always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So we're going to take her in that direction. And then what's crazy is that when I went to college, my father began sending me business books to read. He would ship me books. And I began reading business and finance books because of my dad. So it's I feel like in somehow he knew as well that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So had he heard of that what Mrs. Skokner told me, he probably could have interjected or intervened and gotten me back on track. So make sure you ask your children what's going on in your college life. What are people saying to you there? What kind of conversations are you having? And do the same in college as well when they're in college. Number 8, teach your children the difference between internal validation versus external validation. This way, they will know it when their inner voice is speaking to them, and they won't seek that outside voice when they need to make critical decisions, such as what to major in college. So, teach them how to hear their internal compass through meditation, through prayer, through silent time, or just that small voice that we all hear from time to time when we quiet ourselves enough. And number 9, I think that's my last one. Number 9, ask your college goer if they are happy. Please keep in mind that 4 years of college is a very long time, and there could be a lot of ups and downs during that time. You need to make sure your child is still happy. They may not even be happy at the college in which they've enrolled, but you need to know that. And if you never take the time to say, are you happy there? Are you happy with your coursework? Are you happy with your professors? Are you happy with your grades? Are you happy with your extracurricular activities? Are you happy with your downtime? What are you doing during your downtime? What type of classes are you taking? How is your major going? Do you feel like you need to intern now? Do you feel like you are getting what you're supposed to get out of this major? Do you feel like you're getting what you should be getting out of your tuition costs? Ask those types of questions, because the truth is, for me, I felt very lost in my senior year. I was on track. I was just the happiest college student ever in my freshman, sophomore, and junior year. But in my senior year, I felt super lost, and I was terrified of graduating because I had no clue what I was going to do, and nobody was asking me what I was going to do. So please don't make that same mistake. Ask your child if they are still happy while they are enrolled in college. So, like I said, to wrap up, I have been able to redeem myself now that I have gotten calm and quiet, and now the loudest voice within me is my own voice. It's my own internal validation system, which I have spent years developing since I became aware that I was a person who sought external validation. Please do not allow that to happen to your child, and get them on track and help them to stay on track. Thank you so much for listening, and please help your child go to college.